Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the RDA, and I hope you are doing well. Obviously my last video was very negative, but you know what, honestly I couldn't care. If people think I'm negative and people think I'm toxic, then don't leave the house. Don't go into the big bad world. Honestly, like, I don't get this culture of if you're Ollie out, you don't understand what a process is, you don't understand that managers need time, you're an impatient modern football fan who honestly doesn't understand that these things take time and Roma wasn't built in a day and the Colosseum wasn't built overnight, and therefore you're an idiot because you don't want Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to do well, yet you support the club. You claim to support the club. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got nothing to do with that, fam. You know? Like, I would love to be a FIFA pro, but you know, I'm crap at FIFA. I want to be good at FIFA, but I'm crap at FIFA. There's a reason why I'm not a pro FIFA player. You know, welcome to the big bad world. Anyways, moving on. Daniel James, I think, is an interesting talking point, which we'll get to in this video. The game against Real Sociedad will be our focus and why I think the following players should start. So I'm going to go through my predicted XI, and I understand and I'm fully aware that this probably won't be the lineup that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to go with. But hey, this is what I would go with if I was in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's shoes. Dean Henderson in goal. Alex Telles at left back. Harry Maguire, I know he needs to be rested, but, you know, I can't see a world where Bailey and Tuanzebe play in the same back four, even if Ollie listened to my advice. So Maguire probably, Tuanzebe next to him, Williams next to him. And the reason why I keep Maguire in there is because Bailey and Tuanzebe probably deserve a lot of game time, but at the same time, Real Sociedad aren't suddenly a bad team just because we beat them 4-0. A comeback is not completely off the cards, and I think if we go completely weak, and we play a full-on second team or third team, if you want to even call it that. We play a full-on third team with young players. I think we could honestly risk losing and embarrassing ourselves. So that's why I think someone like Harry Maguire has to start. And I never thought I'd say that. Harry Maguire has to start so we don't get battered. Interesting, because he's cost us so many goals this season, we might as well just get battered if he plays. But, you know, banter aside, I think Harry Maguire should start just to keep some sort of normality in that back four. But yeah, I think Williams should play, because if you're not going to use him in a game like this, when are you going to use him really? And Aaron Wan-Bissaka needs to rest, fam. Like, I do not want to see Wan-Bissaka playing. Tuanzebe and Telles, as I said. And also, just very quickly on Wan-Bissaka, I think another reason why he hasn't been performing to the same standards as he was last season probably has something to do with his injury. But moving on to the midfield, I think Matic has got to play. I think Fred probably has to start, because I think McTominay, he needs a week off after carrying the knock, firstly. And second of all, he's in such good form at the moment that I think he's technically more of a first teamer than Fred is. I think Fred, and that's no disrespect to Fred, by the way, but I think you got to play Matic, and you know Donny van de Beek's not going to play in the double pivot next to Matic, but you know we're going to play a double pivot anyways. So there's no one else besides Fred. So whether you prefer Fred or McTominay, whichever one you prefer to start next to Matic, I think one of them has to start next to Matic. Donny van de Beek, I think, should start in the 10, and I believe if he is going to start, he will start in the 10 because of the evidence we've seen in the past. Donny van de Beek doesn't really start in this Manchester United team. Well, I mean, he doesn't really start in general, but the few times he has started, it's always when Bruno hasn't been in the team, 90% of the time. So I think if we do see Donny van de Beek, and I think we should see Donny van de Beek, seeing as we're 4-0 up, as disrespectful as that sounds, you know, like we shouldn't need to be 4-0 up to see Donny van de Beek. But anyways, that's a topic for another video. Donny van de Beek should be in the team. He should be in the team. I think Dan James should play on the left. Definitely, I don't see Dan James as a first teamer. I don't care that he scored 2 goals all of a sudden out of the clear blue sky. Now he's Ryan Giggs. He's the new Welsh protege all of a sudden. I don't care. I really don't care. I think he's still a speed merchant. I think he still needs to improve his positional awareness. I think he still needs to improve his decision making, aka football IQ. I think he needs to add more to his game in terms of technical ability. In other words, add a first touch and learn to be calm and move the ball swiftly and quickly through the midfield like that. You know, one thing I always see with Dan James, and one thing I can honestly, genuinely criticize him on, banter aside, Sonic the Hedgehog insults aside, one thing I genuinely think that Dan James, one thing that could improve him so much as a footballer is if he could just trap the ball and move it on quickly and swiftly in the midfield. He'd probably be a very, very valuable asset, because I think when you have the speed of Dan James and his ability to score goals or get an assist here and there, he's not such a terrible player if he can just hold on to the ball and move it on to a Rashford, move it on to a Martial, move it on to a Cavani. My problem with Dan James is his ball retention is not particularly good. So Dan James is not a good player unless he just has space, acres of space to work with. And yes, on his day, he can do a job even when he doesn't have space, but listen, I'm not interested in the on his day merchants. I think Diallo has to start. I don't think Diallo will start. Greenwood will probably start, and I've got no issues with that. But personally, if I was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I would give Diallo an opportunity in this game. I wouldn't let him play for the full 90 minutes, depending on how things played out. Of course, for 1-0 up, or if it's 1-1 at halftime, then keep him on, sure. But I think I would definitely give him a start, or at least bring him on very early on in the second half and give him a proper run in the team. And then in the striker position, I think it's very, very interesting. I think Martial has got to start for a bit of confidence here. No disrespect to Martial, I do definitely see him as a first-team footballer. I do definitely see him as a future, still a part of Manchester United's future, even though I personally think if I was in issues, I would push for a move, fam, because the amount of times he's had his number 9 jersey taken away from him and the amount of times he's been booted out of the team for a 30-plus-year-old striker, or strikers who just weren't there for more than 3 years, is absolutely disgraceful. But that's a topic for another video. I think Anthony Martial needs confidence. I think Anthony Martial definitely needs to play in a and this is no disrespect to Real Sociedad, but in an easier game where it's not as intense as the Premier League, and he just needs minutes. He just needs minutes to get his confidence back up, in my opinion. And yeah, that's that. And plus, Cavani can't even start in this game if you do think he's a first-team footballer, because he's got a rest for Chelsea. So whether you like Cavani or not, I don't think this is the game for Cavani, you know. And whether you like Martial or not, I think this is definitely the game for Martial to get his confidence back up. So yeah, that about completes my predicted XI. In terms of score predictions, I don't think there's a point of giving a score prediction, but I'm going to go with the cheeky 2-1 Manchester United. That will push the aggregate up to 6-1, you know. So that's actually not bad in my opinion. That's actually not bad. But yeah, just because I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer won't be successful doesn't mean I don't want him to be successful. Always remember that. And for anyone who's watching till the end of this video, just because you disagree with someone, does not mean you have to send them abuse or negative comments or label them as toxic and negative, because the reality is nobody was toxic and negative when we wanted Jose out. The reality is nobody was toxic and negative when we wanted Moyes out. You know, so just because you don't agree with someone doesn't necessarily or automatically mean that they're the toxic ones and they're the negative ones. I think it's important to get that out there, because I'm noticing a trend on Twitter, fam. You know, these guys who are Ollie in, they think their fart doesn't smell and their shit doesn't stink, bro. They think they're better than everybody else. They think they're on a pedestal, you know, especially these season ticket holders who you know, the top reds. I don't know what else to call them, fam. You're not better than the rest of the fan base. It doesn't make you any more of a real fan just because you back your manager. If people like you were the only ones in our fan base, David Moyes would still be our manager.